AAA games, for the unfamiliar, are games characterized by their high production values, large development teams, and the kind of budgets that would rival the GDP of a small island nation. Think your Hollywood blockbusters, National League Sports, Taylor Swift. They have access to massive marketing, production, and distribution resources because generally they make a few important people a lot of money. Grand Theft Auto V by Rockstar Games had an estimated budget of $265 million and took over 3 years to develop. However, by the third day of its release, the game had exceeded $1 billion in sales. Traditionally, these kinds of IPs were safe bets, printing money like a COVID economy. And if you look at the best-selling games in any given year, you'll see it's dominated by these titles. Why then are people saying that AAA games are dying? To understand why people have been predicting the death of AAA titles over the last few years, we need to take a step back. The term AAA was coined in the late 90s, borrowing the term from the credit industry's bond rating system, a system which eventually led to the largest recession since the Great Depression, but that's a different video. This term was used to describe games being produced at a blockbuster scale, one of the earliest examples being Squaresoft's Final Fantasy VII, a game that stood out from its contemporaries not only in scale, but also the fact that it had an estimated $80 million production and marketing budget, which basically made it the avatar of video games at the time. With unprecedented cinematic CGI, a huge orchestral score, and groundbreaking visuals, Final Fantasy VII pushed the bar to a place most people thought video games couldn't go. By the 2000s, AAA games started being marketed like Hollywood movies, with huge trailers and celebrity endorsements. World of Warcraft famously released a series of ads featuring celebrities like Aubrey Plaza, Ozzy Osbourne, and Mr. Let's Put Bibles Back in School Again, Chuck Norris. Long gone were the humble roots of the 25-cent arcade cabinet. Gaming had become universal. There was also something else happening during the same time. This little thing called the internet was getting faster and more widely available. Between 2005 and 2010, the number of internet users worldwide nearly doubled, jumping from 16 to 30%. A surge of innovation and an industry obsessed with disruption was about to fundamentally change the ways we interacted with media. There was a time when physical media ruled the world. Your music came on CDs, your news on paper, your porn in magazines, and your video games on discs and cartridges. If you wanted to play the new hype game first, you had to sit in a crowd of sweaty gamers during the midnight release. On PC, internet speeds had finally become fast enough that digital distribution of games had suddenly become viable. In 2004, game publisher Valve released Steam, a platform originally designed to distribute games Valve had developed. Eventually, they expanded into distributing third-party titles, growing their catalog to over 50,000 games by 2021, with about 48,000 of those games being kind of dog shit. The proliferation of internet-enabled consoles also opened up similar distribution capabilities. This, however, turned out to be a double-edged sword. Digital games offered a few conveniences to the consumer: less physical clutter, the ability to download and play your games at will, and most importantly, not needing to interact with the employees at your local GameStop. The drawback is that without physical media, there's no ownership. You can't turn around and resell the digital copy of a game you've purchased after you've completed it. You simply own the rights to play it. As an extension of this, there's no ability to trade games in. While maybe not a significant contributing factor to AAA game sales, it wasn't an uncommon practice for people to trade in their old games to help fund the purchase of the new shiny game that just released. Ultimately, this move to digital distribution was a win for publishers, who no longer needed to worry as much about physical distribution or warehousing of inventory, but it was an even bigger win for independent game developers who suddenly had access to an audience which, up until this point, had been entirely unavailable to them. There was a pretty significant technological and economic shift during the 2000s. The democratization of game development created a lower barrier of entry to the field for new developers. Tooling made things more accessible, and software that would have typically cost thousands of dollars was now open source and freely available. Game engines abstracted the hard parts of building a game out. Software like Blender allowed for the creation of 3D models, and forums popped up helping like-minded people with different skill sets to find and collaborate with each other. With the launch of digital marketplaces on consoles, indie game developers developers were no longer limited to just developing games for PC. Famously, 2008's Braid and 2010's Super Meat Boy found huge financial success after launching on the Xbox Live Arcade marketplace, both games being the subject of the film Indie Game the Movie. Social media was turning these developers into celebrities, and it turns out some of them were terrible people. This created a sort of indie game renaissance. These games could explore non-typical stories and mechanics that might be deemed too risky for a large studio. Many of these games released to huge critical and commercial success. Stardew Valley made millions of dollars just by pandering to our collective intrinsic desire to work on a farm. AAA publishers were slow to react to the disruption happening in the industry. They didn't build publisher brands or create social platforms. They instead chose to ship unfinished games chock full of aggressive microtransactions. It started innocently enough with some cosmetic armor for your horse in Elder Scrolls Oblivion, but now almost every game had some form of paid content. But developing a game is expensive, and yes, it is corporate greed, and it's also a way for publishers to mitigate risk. After losing control over distribution, game publishers only had one real advantage to leverage: production scale. A game like Red Dead Redemption takes the kind of time and money that only greedy corporate machines can finance. They funnel this money into developing new entries in their top franchises, your Call of Duties, Grand Theft Autos, Leisure Suit Larrys. These are great games that make filthy money and are well received, but this also limits the publisher's ability to create new intellectual properties. The production scale and cost for developing a AAA title has become so absurd that there's little room for taking risks. Technical boundaries and graphical fidelity continue to be pushed further, which creates almost unreasonable expectations. I know what you're thinking, gamers being unreasonable? That sounds ridiculous. The last and potentially most damning variable are live service games. These are games that are continually updated with new content, features, and events to be engaging and have players continuing to come back. Note that I said engaging and not fun, because a lot of these games employ mechanics to psychologically manipulate players into spending money, but that's a different video. Live service games have completely dominated the console landscape. In March 2023, the top Xbox and PlayStation games by monthly active users were Fortnite with 36 million, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 with 22 million, Grand Theft Auto 5 with 19 million, FIFA 23 with 18 million, and Minecraft with 15 million. Comparatively, Hogwarts Legacy, released in February, managed to hit 5 million, while March's Resident Evil 4 remake hit 4 million. The more important metric, however, is engagement. The average FIFA player returned to the game over 33% of the days in March. In contrast, in its first month of release, Hogwarts Legacy only hit 18%. Competition used to be against other new releases, but now you also need to compete for the floating audience of players who might be drawn back into live service games for an event or content update. You could make a beautiful AAA single-player title that's left in the dust because Fortnite's new season added a hot new anime protagonist to the game. With this dominance, publishers are basically obliged to work live service games into their release strategies. Diablo 4 has seasons, battle passes, and a cosmetic shop. There is more monetization strategies than there is game. The way we play games has changed. It's impossible to deny just how popular the medium has become, worth more than the film and music industries combined. It's no surprise then that everyone is trying to find a slice of this pie. It's a mixing pot of monetization models and aggressive strategies to pry players and their wallets away from competition. So no, AAA titles are not on the brink of death, but they could be getting closer if publishers fail to adapt to the changing landscape. Things like subscription services are disrupting audience behavior. As of 2022, it was reported that Xbox Game Pass had surpassed 25 million subscribers. This has created a fundamental shift in how users are choosing the games that they play. Microsoft's Xbox division reported $3.9 billion in revenue for Q1 of 2024, and a lot of that credit belongs to the release of Bethesda's Starfield in September. Successful AAA games are still one of the biggest moneymakers in all of entertainment. Studios will need to realign their expectations against their capabilities, but there's still too much money on the table to say AAA games are dying anytime soon. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe for more.